Hi everyone, I'm your host Neha and you're tuned into Durian Dreaming, the show that brings you extraordinary stories from seemingly ordinary experiences in Indonesia's fast-paced market. Let's dive into today's conversation with another inspiring guest. Hi everyone, welcome back to Durian Dreaming. Today on the show, we are joined by Shiv Sehgal. He's the President Director of Sasa International. Shiv's journey has taken him from building a powerhouse brand at Unilever to leading one of the Indonesia's most iconic food companies. He's combined sharp business thinking with a deep understanding of what makes brands connect with people. Today, we'll hear about his career path, what drew him to Indonesia's food scene, and how he's helping shape the next chapter at Sasa. So without much ado, let's welcome our next guest, Shiv Sehgal. Hi, Shiv. We are very excited to have you on a podcast. Welcome to Durian Dreaming.
Thank you, Neha. I hope I can live up to that introduction you've given. Sounded like you're talking about somebody else, but thank you very much for having me here.
It's a pleasure, Shiv. So, Shiv, tell us about your career journey. I mean, from India to Indonesia. How did you land up here?
So, like most things, it happened. I think it was a lot of good fortune. It was a lot of, great opportunities. I'd started my career back in the day with Reckitt's, and then after quite a few years at Reckitt's, I moved over to Sara Lee back in India. Sara Lee had two businesses in India. And I was in this Chennai-based, very small setup. Was not on anybody's radar. But I think what happened was because of the competitive attack back in the day with one of our brands called Brylcreem was under a lot of attack from both from Parachute, Marico's Parachute and Set Wet. And our response really caught the attention of the larger Sara Lee world. To not only come back, but come back stronger in terms of both share and in terms of turnover. And that caught their attention, and then there was this vacancy in Indonesia. And so they offered me this job for marketing director for the Indonesian business, and that was my first step out. And since then, we haven't gone back.
Wow. And did you ever dream that you would be leading in Indonesia and that too in the F&B sector? Because I think all through you've been in the CPG space, right?
Totally. In fact, the move from consumer, from household and body care to foods was, quite a surprise move. And it was an unexpected move, to be honest with you. This is when Sara Lee, divested its business in Indonesia. And part of the divestment, I met up with the Unilever team and they said, yeah, great, we'd love to have you on board, but we have a vacancy in foods. So for a moment, I couldn't believe it because, I had never done foods before.
Yeah.
I know what a great beef rendang tastes to me, but my palate is not the Indonesian palate.
Yeah.
So kudos to the Unilever Indonesia team for taking a punt on me, and I spent the next 2 years in foods in Unilever Indonesia and haven't looked back since then.
Oh wow! But leading a global giant like Unilever versus a homegrown Indonesian company like Sasa, I mean, I'm sure it requires a very different set of leadership muscles or different speed or different culture. How did you have to adjust your leadership style moving from Unilever to Sasa?
So, leadership style aside, and we can touch upon that a little later. Though I must admit the heavy lifting was done by the team at Sasa and less by me. But I hope I also pivoted a bit. But I think the biggest change happened because we used to in companies in multi organizations you're used to 24/7 on the job, mails coming 24/7. You clean up your mail on a Friday, then you check back in over the weekend, and Monday morning at 8 a.m. your inbox is full, right? So the biggest cultural shift happened to me when I was I opened my email and there was zero mails. I got withdrawal symptoms.
Oh, I remember we were discussing this.
And and then you realize, and it so happened that I had to go down to Malaysia to get my work permit transfer, and I was there in Malaysia for a week because the work permit from Unilever I had to move over to Rodamas, to Sasa, and no one was writing to me. There were no meetings, and I was wondering, what the hell is going on? And that's when you realize that it's fundamental difference between the MNC culture and the local setup. And there are very good reasons for that. This is more about conversations, meetings, WhatsApps, and less about mails. Because everybody's in the same office. You're not aligning somebody sitting in London or reaching out to somebody sitting in Brazil or talking to someone in Singapore. Everybody's in the same setup. So you have more face-to-face conversations. You have more face-to-face interactions. WhatsApp is used very, very liberally.
So maybe it's more faster way of working here, can we say? Because, you're not, like you said, you're not aligning with any regional teams or headquarters, so to speak. And things move super fast, even like when connecting with people at work.
For sure, because, we've all been in this position where the email turns into a conversation. And then one email, because there are 20 people marked in, because, the large number of CCs, because there is a bit of a, how do I protect myself attitude. And each of those spawns off into a different being by itself, right? You've got that, it's got these offshoots of emails happening. Now, that doesn't happen because here you sit face to face, you have a clear conversation, and then everybody just runs with it. So it's a very, very different way of doing business. It's a much faster way of doing business.
Yeah.
Albeit it's also a less data-driven way of doing business. And that's where, it's more intuitive. And that's where I think is the greatest value addition, which I'm trying to bring in, where we're saying, it can't be about points of view and opinion. Those are important. But it needs to be backed with data.
Yeah.
As someone once said, I think it was Bloomberg who said this, in God we trust, the rest bring data. So it's fundamental.
You rightly said, the way people work here is more faster, more intuitive. Even the local brands are super fast. The way they move in the market, like deeply connected to the culture, often fearless in their marketing. They don't play by the traditional MNC playbook or the rule book. How different is the playbook when competing against agile local brands compared to global MNCs?
Extremely, extremely different. I think the metrics we look at are very, very different.
Okay.
So, but I think the underlying thing is that in MNCs, fundamentally people are managing their career as opposed to managing the business. You see a lot of that happening. And because they're large organizations with multiple stakeholders, the art of storytelling, which is important, reaches epic proportions where it's all about, I'm okay, you're not okay, I've done my bit, we didn't do well because maybe somebody else, some other department couldn't deliver, etc. And of course, MNCs have a lot of advantages, they have a lot of scale, they have a lot of knowledge, but this culture also creeps in in a lot of organizations, right? Where you've got people walking in saying, okay, I'm here for 3 years, how do I spin it and kind of get my next story going forward? So the local company is it's been there for 50, 70 years and it's going to be there for the next 100, 200 years. So it's a more long-term perspective.
So speaking of agility, Indonesia is one of the most digitally active populations in the world. But yet I've noticed that many companies approach digital like a traditional media channel. They're not really fully exploring its potential. So where do you think digital marketing is still being misunderstood or underutilized?
So digital marketing, in my opinion, is a much misunderstood beast.
Okay.
You've got some companies which say, this is the future and let's just go head first into it. And they, bet the entire bank on it, which is also not the right thing to do. And there's some companies saying, who are still kind of dipping their toes into this water, right? What fundamentally at its core, what digital marketing has done is it has at a very basic level, democratize the brand. Now the brand belongs to everybody. It doesn't belong to the corp. So the brand tenets of, for example, of this is my brand color, these are my brand codes, this is the tonality. That has gone out of the window because it's now about how does the brand code and match with the channel per se, because the viewer on TikTok is different from the viewer on Instagram.
Exactly.
And of course, then it becomes about engagement, about reach, and it's become much cheaper to make assets and to reach out to consumers, and you can talk to them fundamentally, in the area at the time when they're most receptive. So there's a lot of work to be done in that space.
Shiv, you mentioned TikTok earlier, and with micro trends exploding and fading so quickly on the platform, it feels increasingly challenging for brands to stay culturally in sync. Now, relevance seems like a constantly moving target. Do you think it's harder for traditional brands to maintain relevance in today's landscape? And how is Sasa navigating this challenge?
So, at a more fundamental level, it's about what problem you're trying to solve. Now, that truth hasn't changed. Right?
Okay.
What has changed is the manner it's portrayed in. What's changed are the custodians, right? So from that perspective, I think we have, from our end, we are very, very clear in terms of in what medium, how to speak to which consumer. For example, what works on Instagram will not work on TikTok. So we're trying to get that playbook ready. Then you have to be a little more relaxed about how your brand is portrayed, because it's no longer a one-way conversation, right? The beauty of digital in foods is that you can micro target, and food is all about micro. Because what the top dish in Bandung is different from the top dish in Jakarta. Historically, you talked about the top dish across Indonesia. You had no choice, but now you can really go micro. In certain channels, humor works. So it opens up a world of opportunities.
Okay.
The biggest challenge here is what do you let go of? I still see a lot of people talking about print. You got to let go of something, right?
Oh, I thought when you said let go means which conversations you can let go on the platform.
That too. In terms of conversation, you've lost that agenda. So whether you want to let go or not, you're not in control, right? So that's a given. The brand no longer belongs to you. The brand belongs to the people who use it, right?
Yeah. Actually, you've partly answered about micro-targeting on TikTok, but I still want to ask this question. TikTok is a very serious sales channel in Indonesia. It's really changing how people trust and buy brands on TikTok. But I'm curious to know how TikTok is reshaping consumers, how they discover and buy food products on TikTok. Honestly, like yesterday only, I was, of course, buying something on TikTok shop and I said, oh, I have not been getting baked beans anywhere. Let me look it up. But for a while, it did struck me, am I buying food on TikTok? How do you see TikTok shaping the consumers who buy food products on it?
For us, TikTok is less of a sales channel,
okay,
and more of a information awareness and brand building channel. And the fundamental reason for that is the cost to serve is extremely high, and hopefully our distribution footprint is good enough to be next door. No consumer is going to buy a 5,000 rupiah product and pay another 10,000 rupiah for delivery and can't afford that, right? So what's happened fundamentally is that the recipes have exploded. The home chefs, the personalization exploded. So this cooking as a habit has become a little more mainstream. The hacks have become extremely easy. One amazing shift which has happened, right? And all these kitchen aids were kept in the cupboard. They were not talked about. It was they were seen as crutches. They were my dirty little secret. Now these are open and out, and they are marketed as hacks. So that the purest cook has been redefined, and you can see that playing on the advertising. If you pull back to the advertising of soup stocks, a very large category, Now it's about convenience, about taste, about speed. So that TikTok culture is now, manifested into everything. We want a meal in 5 minutes, in 10 minutes. No one's going to wait, a day for, half or 2, 3 hours of cooking for it.
So is Sasa going to sponsor the next Master Chef, become a Master Chef in few minutes with Sasa products?
That's the attention span. We need a 2 minute master chef now.
When we talk about TikTok and we talk about fast trends and attention span, we also talk about AI somewhere in between, right? Because now with AI powering everything, like from chatbots to, let's say, campaign ideation, many brands are rethinking how they build emotional resonance with consumers, especially in a diverse market like Indonesia. How do you see AI changing the way brands build emotional connections with the consumers, especially in the Indonesian context?
Honestly, this is your guess is as good as mine. We are all still learning in this space. And I think all of us, across the board have this, we don't truly understand the power of this tool, right? Right now, we're still kind of figuring out what it can do for us.
Yeah.
So I wish I had an answer, but I am still at the very early learning stage on this one, right? Right now we're using AI for data, for predictability.
Got it, Shiv. So AI is definitely still a learning curve for all of us. So let's shift gears and let's talk about advertising for a moment. How do you think brands should approach creativity differently today compared to, say, 5 years ago?
This scene is evolving so much. So there are 2 or 3 things happening. One is the attention span has crashed. Secondly, the choices have exploded, right? So it's about relevance within that medium, and it's about the topicality of that conversation, right? The expiry date on the commercials has become much shorter because the conversation shifts very quickly. So it's become very, very important for us to really understand which conversations you want to take part in, which ones you don't. And I think there's a need for agility, across the board. And no matter how fast you get, it's not going to get, you'll never be there.
But in Indonesia, the creativity or storytelling is one part. It needs to blend flawlessly with the e-commerce part as well. And sometimes it feels like catching up, like because all that needs to translate and take the consumers to a marketplace or to a commerce platform. What's your take on creative capabilities of Indonesian agencies today?
If I look at the past couple of years, I think there have been some really amazing Indonesian agencies that have come up.
Okay.
But, the challenge they face is on the financial model, not on the creative. And you're seeing, both FAB and FCN, to mention 2 of them, win so many accounts across the board. And get into an area which was fundamentally held by the MNCs, right? And also, if you double click on inside the large, advertising labels, you see a lot of local talent. So that's a huge change that has happened. Unfortunately, this setback of this latest financial, not being completely transparent on the financial model and tracking the financial model will set back the Indonesian agencies by a bit. Otherwise, this was, a wave waiting to happen.
Yeah. I've often seen usually the best insights come not from global case studies, but from watching the very local players who deeply understand their consumers. Are there any lessons you have learned from local competitors that MNCs often miss?
So, a couple of things. Firstly, the way the metrics MNC look at and the metrics, a local player looks at are very, very different. And I think that gives them a bit of a competitive edge. But, I think intuitively what happens is there's so much more business-oriented conversations. It's more about, what is the consumer need and consumer opportunity lying out there? It's unfettered. It's not about brand fit and there's brand extension, etc. It's about this is an opportunity. how do I maximize this? Now, that may be under the same brand, different brand, doesn't matter, right? For example, in MNC, be very clear about, this is our core competence. There's no such thing. There is unmet consumer need. Can you add value? Go for it. It's as simple as that.
But tell me something, with everything moving so fast, like, use of AI, consumer shifts, new platforms, leadership also in today's time and age needs to be very agile. So what personal leadership shifts are you consciously working on to stay effective in the environment?
I hide. So, so I think one of the big ones here is there's no such thing as over communication, right? You really need to understand and make people comfortable enough to tell you what exactly they're thinking. So the whole, the oracle has spoken of, so it shall be done doesn't exist anymore. So you need to really kind of get under the skin of it and make people comfortable enough to have that conversation with you, which itself is a journey. So which talks a lot more informal conversations, a lot more coffee chats, a lot more walking around, a lot more, going to different floors and just finding out what happened and how they're feeling and what they're going through. Otherwise, you don't get it. So it's first building that relationship and then kind of layering it on and hoping to reach a level where people feel comfortable enough to really disagree with you openly and kind of voice their concern. But
wow.
One of my favorite points is, the company has hired your brain. The company hasn't hired your arms and legs. We pay the premium for the brain. So if you don't give me access to your brain, you're not being fair. So, but how do you allow people to give you access to their brain? What they're thinking is where the big unlock lies.
That's a great point about, building real connections and open conversations. Okay, now complete the sentence. The future of marketing in Indonesia will be?
Future of marketing in Indonesia will be determined by the consumers, will be totally democratized, and will be in the hands of the people who own the brand.
Brilliant. Shiv, can we play some rapid fire questions?
Go for it. I can try my best.
Okay. One marketing trend you think is overhyped right now?
Convenience.
Good. Okay. A brand outside of Sasa that you really admire?
Lemon Red.
Okay. First app you check in the morning?
WhatsApp.
Well, okay. An AI tool you've actually found useful?
Midjourney.
Okay. Oh, nice. Last one. One piece of leadership advice you heard and you completely disagree with?
One piece of leadership jargon that I've heard, which I fundamentally disagree with, is that if people are not talking, they're not engaged. And honestly, I fundamentally believe that there are multiple styles of leadership. We get so caught up in this whole Western style of leadership, which is aggressive and out there. But there are multiple styles of leadership. If you look at a leadership style in Southeast Asia, especially in Indonesia, it's very, very different. They may not voice it because they're being respectful towards you, but they may not agree with you and they have their own very, very clear point of view. I think the biggest one is how do you get that point of view on the table? That's where the leadership challenge lies.
No, very rightly pointed. I think even in Indonesian context, people, like you said, they don't have to be always vocal to show that they're engaged. And Indonesians have a very unique way of showing that they are engaged while remaining quiet, or they would prefer a side chatter versus, be out loud there.
Absolutely. And, because all the multinationals have, they're fundamentally Western companies become multinationals, we've also imported the whole Western concept of leadership.
Yeah.
We need to understand there are multiple concepts of leadership. And, just being the loudest in the room and being the most vocal in the room works in certain cultures, but that's not the only style of leadership.
Absolutely. Shiv, so what's one thing you're most excited about, personally or professionally, over the next year?
I'm actually extremely excited about this current job. Okay. The bandwidth it gives you, the freedom it gives you is amazing. in my previous role, of course, as general manager, you're responsible for the P&L, but you had, you had a problem with the factory. You had a supply chain expert, a stream of supply chain people. Here, it's pretty much you got to figure this one out yourself. Sometimes I get a little scared of, am I making the right decision? Because, is there someone else I can talk to and get a second point of view?
Right.
So I'm extremely, extremely positive about and excited about, the future of this company and what we can do with it.
Very, very exciting, Shiv. Thank you so much. Thank you for a very candid conversation, sharing your perspective, sharing your journey and insights with us. It's been an incredible conversation.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate you taking your time out. Really appreciate this conversation. It's been very focusing. Thank you.
And that's a wrap for this episode of Durian Dreaming. I hope today's discussion sparked some new ideas for you. Don't forget to subscribe, share your thoughts, and stay tuned for more exciting stories. Until next time, keep dreaming big.